to about minus 320 degrees Fahrenheit in liquid nitrogen. And once you've done that, pretty much everything except a few quantum effects have stopped. And you've avoided a lot of the ice damage that would happen if you just jumped into a freezer for a long time. And then you're waiting maybe a very long time, but time is on your side at that point for some kind of restoration, maybe not of your entire body, maybe a digital representation, but in the old take on this in cryonics. And I am someone who has signed up for that, as I've made clear since my book, Fuzzy Thinking, 30 years ago.
Right.
In that, but I was saying, in that world, and the old idea was if you just stored your head, for example, we'd grow your body back from a head stump and all would be fine. But the crucial thing is the information that makes you, you, is in your synapses in your brain. And if you burn it, or if you dissolve it through burial, embalming, etc., you've lost it. You've encountered what we call information death, and that is irreversible.
Why would you want to do that? What inspires you to break that barrier?
You know, I'd like to pick up a few more degrees. I'm just getting going. Like you, I'm about to turn 63. I'm doing everything I can. And really just getting going life. But the key thing is I want to die on my terms.
Right.
And I think in the future, and I think this will be routine, it'll be a version that'll change that the coward dies many deaths, but the brave die only one. I think the ordinary person will probably die many times if they choose to. Some people, maybe it's for kind of a sport. I want to do it on my terms when I'm ready to go. Or maybe just take some time out. I don't know if you ever read the story by that short novel by Arthur C. Clarke called The City and the Stars.
Yeah.
And it said way in the future, in people a billion years in the future, we've gone to the stars, we've done everything we've dreamed about, people kind of get bored and they come back, and then periodically they commit themselves to the blue flames, be reconstructed at some other point. But right now, we're tied to the old rules of Darwin, and they just don't match our culture, our digital technology, and we can do a lot better.
And they certainly don't match our society within the context of the way laws are written in terms of, right, the legislation that gives us money at a certain age and then pays until another certain age, and our system would go totally broke if everybody was living forever.
Yeah, that's an interesting proposition. I think what you're referring to is some of the old property law. There's a very famous rule in there that bedevils students in property. I'm talking real property, not intellectual property. And it's called RAP. Not the music, but the rule against perpetuities. And it comes out of merry old England, as does most of our laws. And it in effect says that you can't extend trust-type systems beyond 21 years in a so-called life and being. No one's really known what that's meant. There's been jokes about it even made by judges on the bench. So what's happened really since the 90s is that several states, because states have so much power in our constitutional system, on all property law is state law. For example, thank God there's no federal property law. And as a consequence, some states have abolished the rule against perpetuity. Kentucky has. Other states, you're in Kansas, I'm in California, Hawaii, many others have extended it to 90 years. Colorado recently extended it to 1,000 years. And I think Wyoming also. They've got rid of it completely. Texas lets it stay in place. So you could set up a type structure. I don't mean a charitable trust, which has always been set up, but your personal selfish trust to go on for a very long time. Now, combine that, and this is where I think is getting to your point, with what's known in finance, a theorem called the Rule of 72. And let me just remind your listeners what that means. If, this is an approximation, but if you put money in the bank at a constant rate of return of, let's say, 10%, if you divide that into 72, so 72 divided by 10 tells you in about 7 years, your money will double. Contrary-wise, if it were a 7% rate of return, and good luck in getting that, and dividing that into the 72, it would take about 10 years. So you might ask, well, if I had money, billionaire or poor man, if I put $1 or $1 billion right now into the stock market, to the S&P 500, Apple, Microsoft, firms like that, that's 10.5% compound interest. Probably your best bet, all else held constant, unless you're Warren Buffett, who gets 20.1%, by the way, and the only person in history to do that for 50 years. But if you have 10.5% rate of return like S&P, so after 10 years, your dollar becomes $2.71. I did the calculations. After 100 years, your dollar becomes $21,700. After 200 years, $470 million plus dollars. And here we go. And after 500 years, it would become $5 billion trillion. I mean, the whole system breaks down from there, just growing at the ordinary rate at which our tech market and our market economy grows. So extending your life, though, a little bit can make a big difference here just in the rate of compounding.
So, yeah, and which is great for those people who have money to invest. The majority of, I would guess, I don't know what the figures are, but I would assume that the majority of Americans do not have much money to invest beyond, say, a mutual fund or a 401k. Right. And so they depend on Social Security, and Social Security depends on somebody dying at a time where the money that they have put into Social Security is about equal to what they've taken out, or not much more than that. And it certainly couldn't sustain if people started taking Social Security at, say, age 67, but they're not dying until 137.
That's right. I mean, that clearly will have to be adjusted. It is starting to scale up. I think you and I were the first group that were born in 1960. Right. And instead of taking it out at 65, got to wait till 67, and just after that. Yeah, absolutely. But you're right. The average person now is concerned with 10+% inflation if you really factor in all the other costs. And that works like the rule of 72, but against you. And people are holding too much debt. By the way, there is a concept that's been out. It's called a libertarian nudge, and very controversial. And Professor Cass Sunstein proposed this. He's at Harvard University. But
I've heard of him, but I haven't heard of this.
Oh, yeah, this is probably his most famous, and Robert Thaler's most famous idea. And that is, if you look at the experiment that we've had in this country in voluntary pension funding, it's been an utter failure, no matter how you look at it. If you look at the total amount of funding that accounts for a lot of rich people's wealth, you get something like savings of $250,000, and that's not enough to live on in retirement. But the average person, factoring out the super rich, I think the average person has less than $100,000 in their retirement. So the idea is this: the nudge, which restricts liberty in just a tiny amount, trying to make you be a little bit more rational, would set as a default that you opt in to whatever wage program you have with your employer, a certain amount of savings for your retirement. But it's libertarian in the sense that you can always opt out. Right now, the default is that you are opted out. Growing fast, and you can't have this kind of inflation that we have that's undermining, I think, everybody, even the rich folks. But the effect on the middle class and poor, I think, is it's staggering. We haven't seen this since we were kids in the 70s, basically, that kind of thing. But one thing you can do is, again, I'm trying to avoid the word,
no, it's good.
But as a default, try to get everybody saving. And if you just introduce kids, as I've tried to do over the years, to what I just told you, the rule of 72. And if we had time, if we had a whiteboard, I would give you the mathematical proof of why the rule of 72 is actually a theorem by expanding a property, an infinite series of the logarithm. But when kids see that and they get that, and they realize they can have time on their side, and that we tend to think about life in general in a linear way. And indeed, if you look at an exponential, if you expand it, the first term is linear, but then it's quadratic, then it's cubic, and then it's quartic. And then if you can allow time, you need probably a good 20 years to handle the ups and downs. You can, whatever your station in life, you can substantially improve it over having, just as we used to say in Kansas, just eating the seed corn.
Right. But even just so, by the way, so we could take Social Security starting at 65. The amount is it's small. So if you wait until 67, then it's a much more sort of understandable, workable payout. 70 is when it's pretty good. So if anybody can hold up to 70 who was born after 1960, you get a pretty good deal. But you got to last till 70. What does the rule of 72 have? Is that related at all to the average lifespan of human males in America, which is about 72, isn't it? I think we're better than that now. I think we'll be on that. Okay.
Yeah, it's a mathematical principle. So I use an example. I'm up in the mountains right now outside of LA. We got a lot of pine trees. If I just look at a young pine tree and estimate how much it's growing per year, 10% a year, and it's currently 8 feet, and I say, okay, how many years will it take until it's 16 feet tall? The Rule 72 applies to that. It would be 7 years. So it is a general fact of compounding at a constant growth rate, whether it's to the average male or whether it's to a pine tree or any amount of money. By the way, Ben Franklin was aware of this. And I forget, I read it once in his autobiography or his essay, but he knew by putting up a small amount of money and allowing it to be handled in a charitable trust, which is relatively new in that time, you can get a lot of the kind of trust that we have today. I don't know if the Franklin Institute's funded that way, but the idea of using that for your own wealth, that's way beyond an ordinary lifespan of 78 or 80 or so years is the proposition before us.
I had to look it up, but life expectancy in the United States had fell in the last couple of years to 77 in 2020 and now 76, but that's an average between men and women in 2021. And men still die die younger than women, and so then you have this whole other thing about spousal support, and then you've got one of the right. I mean, there's a whole thing about some of these places where women are feeling great at 75. There's no men around for them there's very few men. They compete a lot for companionship amongst males because their life expectancy is much better, especially if they've got good health care.
But I have some good news here. I just found this study, came out a couple of days ago. I read studies for fun and I teach stats. And it's out of Harvard in the journal, American Medical Association's Internal Medicine. It says healthy eating patterns and risk of total cause-specific mortality. What it found was, looking at over 100,000 men and women, non-causal study, associative, for several years, they were average 50 years plus, that they simply live longer if they ate the things your doctor tells you to eat.
Right.
So lots of raw fruits and vegetables and seeds and nuts and healthy oil, fats, and basically the Mediterranean diet. So I think a lot of that went the other way during COVID. The diet didn't improve, and there was too much alcohol and so forth. That might have accounted for that.
Too much Uber Eats. I got too easy. By the way, have you seen do you know why it is that men tend to die earlier than their wives?
I heard it was because of hormonal effects, testosterone type effects.
The old joke is
hormonal structure.
The old joke is because they want to, but I think I was anyway, at least when on Ed Sullivan show. All right, so that's where we'll leave it for now. But I want to get back to that subject. You're hitting like one home run after another. So I know this is like batting practice for you, but here we are, and we're looking at immortality both from a physical standpoint. I do want to get back to the digital as well, and this concept that somehow billionaires could live forever, or that they could cure death. Which reminds me that I want to run through the vocabulary of this conversation and see what you agree with and disagree with. Dr. Bart Costco next on Coast to Coast AM. This is Ian Brown.
Power Talk 1460 and FM 101.1.
When you make dinner, somewhere a mouse waits for leftovers. When you clean up, somewhere a cockroach scurries away. Could somewhere be in your home? Household pests are more than a nuisance. Mice contaminate food and transmit disease. Termites cause $5 billion in property damage each year. And cockroaches can trigger asthma attacks. Visit pestworld.org to learn how to protect your family. A public service message from the National Pest Management Association.
I'm Jessica Stone. Ukraine is reeling after a barrage of Russian attacks against critical infrastructure across several cities in Ukraine.
In the east, it's been weeks of fighting over the town of Soledar. Moscow says that it controls the land, while Kyiv argues that the fight is not over. Russia has seized about half of the Donetsk region.
Fox's Alex Hogan reports from Kyiv. Buffalo Bills safety Damar Hamlin visited his teammates at practice Saturday for the first time since his cardiac arrest.
The 24-year-old Hamlin was all smiles as he posed for a photo shaking hands with a teammate. Linebacker Matt Milano posted the picture on Instagram. The visit comes just days after Hamlin was discharged from Buffalo General Medical Center.
Fox's Bob Mortale. Hamlin plans to continue his rehabilitation with the team. The Bills open their playoffs against the Miami Dolphins later today. America is listening to Fox News.
Binge listen this and all your artist stations, plus any song from our library of millions of songs, all ad-free. Get your free 30-day trial of iHeartRadio All Access. You'll love it. Don't be basic, be extra. Start your free 30-day trial of iHeartRadio All Access.
Lisa, you look great. I feel great. I got a personal loan from Happy Money, and now my credit card debt's gone. Happy looks good on you.
Personal loans with low fixed rates and your best interests at heart. Apply today at happymoney.com. Happy Money. Fund your happy. NMLS ID number 1396805. Not all applicants may qualify. Loans are not offered in Massachusetts and Nevada. Happy Money works with lending partners who originate the loans. Additional terms, conditions, and eligibility requirements may apply.
Hello, beautiful. I'm Amy Eric, founder of Madison Reed, a hair color company I named after my daughter. I started Madison Reed to give you the most gorgeous hair color made with ingredients you can feel good about. Are you tired of spending hundreds of dollars at the salon, having appointments take 3 hours, and not knowing the ingredients in your hair color? Then you should try Madison Reed. You may know us for our at-home hair color, but big news, we now have over 77 locations nationwide. We call them hair color bars. Book a service and let us take care of you. We will color your hair in half the time it takes at a typical salon and for a fraction of the price. For a limited time, new clients get 15% off your first hair color service at a Madison Reed hair color bar. Visit madison-reed.com/promo. That's madison-reed.com/promo. Try it. Love it. That's the beauty of Madison Reed.
Soundtrack to Disorderlies is truly like one of the worst hip-hop songs ever, but it's so well produced. I love that opening sequence. So we're talking though about how billionaires could be the only ones that could find a kind of immortality. I think it was Tennyson, right, who said something about everything must die eventually, but we don't know what eventually means anymore. That was what Dr. Bart Costco said last half hour. Exactly how are we defining eventually? And we could, and we seem to have a lot more control over our life expectancy already. The average person does, just based on their diet and the choices they're going to make about what they're going to feed their brain and their vital organs. It's one of the reasons why I gave up meat predominantly. I still eat with fish and occasionally a stray piece of bacon, which demands that somebody consume it. But it's pretty rare, and most of the time I stick away from fatty foods and a low sugar diet. I kind of go Mediterranean in a lot of ways without the lamb. But this is where, for a lot of other people, This is not a junk. They're just going to eat, drink, and be merry, and then they'll die early, and they'll be happy, and that's okay. And smoking and alcohol has a lot to do with it, too. So there will be some people who will choose not to pursue immortality, but there could be a kind of immortal billionaire class, or people that are very well funded anyway, who could choose to try to live as long as possible. Bart himself is going to have his head cryogenically frozen, and that's one path. We'll talk about some of the other ones, and I want to run by the vocabulary of this conversation with him. I was sort of struck by it while I was reviewing it earlier this week. Next on Coast to Coast AM, this is Ian Punnett.
Marvelous Entertainment and author Marvin Sunderland have released the newest in action-adventure science fiction that specifically deals with the question, are we alone in the universe? This action-packed drama includes a 7-novel masterpiece, comic books, video games, and movies of Sergeant Journeys across the universe. Get 20% off the entire 7-novel series and all future graphic novels. Enter coupon code Coast to Coast, all lowercase, on Marvelous.com. That's MARVALEOUS.com.
I didn't think it was possible to meet someone like Susan. We just clicked after realizing we each have a strong sense of self and share the same core values in life.
After taking our advanced personality test, Daniel and Susan matched on Silver Singles, the secure dating site for 50-plus singles who know what they want. Sign up today at silversingles.com/love. That's silversingles.com/love.
Paid actors representing true customer testimonials. Names have been changed.
Are you more than $10,000 in debt? Feel like you're on a never-ending treadmill, staying in one place and never getting ahead with those minimum payments? You feel like there's no way out? Get off the endless debt treadmill and start saving money each month. There are programs in place to help you get free of your debt, and you don't have to pay the entire amount you owe. The program at Total Financial Freedom can help you get debt-free in months instead of decades. Resolve your credit card debt, signature loans, department store cards, internet loans, and even timeshares. Call now at 800-832-2366 for free information. For over 15 years, Total Financial Freedom has helped thousands get out of debt. They're A+ rated by the Better Business Bureau, too. Get off the endless cycle without having to declare bankruptcy. You'll have the right to get your debt resolved for a mere fraction of what you owe. Call Total Financial now at 800-832-2366. That's 800-832-2366. 800-832-2366.
Power Talk 1460 and FM 101.1.
Dr. Bart Costco from USC. We're talking about I'd say a spate of articles about this concept of immortality, especially that is being funded by tech billionaires, and that they could choose to be creatively active for decades past while any of their peers passed. But Bart, before I go any further, let me ask you about this. We all know that nomenclature has a way of changing over time, right? That nobody was sure what to call people who were driving cars just around the turn of the last century. They called them automobilists. And there was a bunch of different terms before they finally came to motorists. And then there was even a time when you were talking about somebody who was a car driver, you didn't even use the word car. So we know this will probably change, but let me ask you how you feel about terms like is this cheating death? The idea of living way beyond life expectancy, or is it curing death?
I would prefer the latter, because again, I see death as an engineering problem, a big one, but one that doesn't. Its solution, so far as we know, likely will not involve trying to go faster than the speed of light or something like that, which would make it physically impossible. On the other hand, it is cheating simple Darwinian death, in which case you and I, my friend, would have long since moved on to our reward. Remember, the basic theory of aging, it's got a technical name called antagonistic pleiotropy, but what it means is what we view as aging is a side effect of what it took to have healthy fertility, which kind of maxes out for humans around 20, 25. mean, the teenage boy was designed for a reason, and there were no grandparents to speak of, or that kind of culture until very, very